Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career with a little self-help around the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope that what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. Today I'm joined by my good friend from JMU, Paul Davis. I want to give Paul Davis an opportunity to talk about his background and his occupation, but I wanted to give a little setup. Me and Paul knew each other since the JMU days. We were in a group on campus called BOND, Brothers of a New Direction, which was a black male group that we had at JMU to support each other, and it was a really great group. We had a great group of guys, some other guys in that group, Ryan Griffin, I still stay in touch with, Brandon Artis, J.C. Cartwright, Rodney Alexander, a couple other people, DDA, and it was a great group support on a not very diverse campus, to say the least. So it was a great way to bond and have support amongst other black males. And it was a really good group. And you were, an officer in that group, correct?
I think at one point, maybe.
Okay. So, Paul, give us a little bit background about who you are and why we're doing this episode today, specifically.
Well, like I said, Paul Davis. I'm from Northern Virginia originally. I am involved, I guess you would say, in politics, both as a volunteer and professionally. In the professional world, I work for an elected official in Fairfax County, helping out people with budget and transportation policy issues. As a volunteer, I'm a partisan with the Democratic Party. I volunteer with Democrats. I helped several campaigns, including this upcoming election, November 6th. And so I just have experience from that standpoint related to politics.
Yeah, so this episode I'm entitling Voteless People as a Hopeless People. As some of the listeners may know, I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, and one of our biggest initiatives is the Voteless People as a Hopeless People campaign. So this is a perfect timing for this episode. I think it's very important that people know the importance of voting and getting involved in politics. Now, mind you, I'm going to be totally upfront with people. I'm not the most politically involved person myself. Beyond that, I do vote in every election. I make sure that I exercise my right to vote. But I wanted to get you on the podcast to kind of help the everyday average American stay informed and some tips for that. So maybe what are some common things that when you're saying, I'm not really, into politics, but I want to vote, what are some things that you talk to people like that?
Well, when people say I'm not into politics, I think you might have this misunderstanding about what politics is and how it drives our world. Every decision is a politics decision, whether I cut a player on a football team, whether I decide to do a next superhero movie, whether I decide to buy a new car. All those decisions are in some way or fashion a political decision. So, you might not say I'm not into politics, but you might just say I'm here, want to focus on this particular issue in politics that really resonates with myself. And so, given that opportunity to kind of understand and reframe that question, I would say that, local politics and state level politics are very important, and everybody needs to be engaged because they're spending your money whether you want to or not. So you need to be involved in that way.
And so you're saying the bottom dollar is that way, and then you say that every decision is politics. Can you explain? So, if we're going back to political science 101, what is politics for dumbed down version?
Politics ultimately is the interaction between people as we kind of look at resources and relationships. For just on an everyday transaction, the reason why clothes cost a certain price, or the reason why there's a McDonald's in your neighborhood versus a Burger King, all those decisions are tied together on a political scale. And it might not be, a quid pro quo or something of that nature, but it might be just in the sense of you elected an official, and that official is using their power to put forward an agenda that is either controlling growth of your community or limiting growth of your community, or they're deciding to pay more tax dollars towards a certain initiative, or taking tax dollars away. So all those decisions are happening in that vacuum of politics. But I think a lot of times the public looks at politics as a lot of the characters, the big actors and stars. But I think there's definitely a role for the average individual to be engaged enough to create a positive change.
Right. Oh wow, I like that. Average person. So the election is coming up, and I'm gonna treat this podcast as a nonpartisan thing. So I do definitely have my own political views, but I want to treat this for the listeners as a way, like, what are some ways before the election that you get prepared for the election? How do you inform yourself? How do you get yourself informed?
Okay, so this upcoming election for November 6th, this is a midterm election. So what does that mean? That means that this is a election in the middle of a presidential term. Every 4 years we elect the president. That's your highest turnout in terms of elections. With the middle term, and when you elect your congressional seat, this is your every 2 years for the House of Representatives and every 6 years for the Senate. So on the ballot here in Virginia, we have Senator Tim Kaine, who's seeking re-election, versus Corey Stewart, who was an elected official from Prince William County. And then if you go down to your House of Representatives, in this particular Fairfax County area, you have Jerry Conley, who's been serving as a congressman, and there's a gentleman named Jeff Dove, who's serving from Prince William, who's going after that seat as well. And so really you're looking to shape what Congress looks like. But on top of that, there are 2 ballot initiatives that are on the ballot this year in terms of constitutional referendums. These 2 constitutional referendums are what's probably going to trick people up. It's information on the backside.
Okay.
And those are really important. So you can find information about those type of subjects a couple of different places. One is, one neutral, objective situation is the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters has been around for a very long time, and their whole MO is just to put out the information. They created a website called vote411.org.
Okay.
And you can go there, you can put in your information, where you live at, whatever state you're at, and they'll tell you the information related to what you're going to see on your ballot. It's not a party or anything like that. It's just straight information, and they also kind of give you an interpretation of what those, questions could be, and how that might impact you, and vice versa, kind of stuff.
So we'll make sure we put that link in the show notes. And so this website will tell you what's in your area and
Correct.
What's going on. And so just dumb it down even more. So we have districts, right? Is
Correct.
that correct?
Yes.
What districts are up for election in Virginia or our area, and how do they break up districts?
Okay, so it has to do with the census. The census counts people, and that's why it's such a big fight every year about who gets counted and who doesn't get counted.
Okay.
Based off the census, the state is proportioned into congressional districts. There are 11 congressional districts in the state of Virginia. All 11 of those seats are open in the House of Representatives, because the House of Representatives has terms of 2 years.
Okay.
So all of them are up. There are a couple incumbents in the seats,
Okay.
And every one of those has a challenger, and then there's people who want to challenge, obviously, and so that kind of makes up the thrust of the campaigning, because the House of Representatives, the whole entire 435 seats in the United States House of Representatives is up for election.
Oh, wow.
And so whoever gets the majority of those seats in that House will rule the House, and they get to choose a speaker. The current speaker is Paul Ryan. The former speaker is Nancy Pelosi. And yes. So it goes back into the connection between, go back to the civics, the legislature, and then there's an executive, which is the president, and then there's the judiciary, which is the Supreme Court.
Who just did with Brett Kavanaugh, whatever his name
yes.
is. Right? That's okay.
And so it's important from a standpoint that the legislature is your body that creates the bills and acts and helps kind of fund makes funding proposals with the help of the executive in connection with the executive. So really, the House has been under the control of the Republican Party for some time now. We have a Republican president. So those two pieces are connected together. The Democrats are hoping to take over the House to provide some kind of check of the president. That's normal. Most Americans feel like, both parties should have some kind of equal balance, and that makes us have better governance.
So that's what that's where essentially the term checks and balances comes.
Yes.
Because if the president is one party and then he has a lot of control, and the House has a different, they can kind of check him and veto his things and whatever, or not veto, whatever you meant.
Well, ultimately, the checks and balances refers to each of those bodies. But yeah, that is essentially the concept.
Like they kind of keep each other in line. So you just said some ways. How did you, I like to, as a career counselor, I always like people's backgrounds. How did you rise up and find that politics is something that you were interested in? Were you interested in high school, and kind of go through your high school to college and to your adulthood of politics?
Well, I kind of bounced around a little bit and related to politics. I have in high school helped out with campaigns, but it really wasn't something that it was a career. I went to college, and like Phil was mentioning, we went to a predominantly white institution. So as an African American, that kind of puts you in a situation where you have to kind of look into yourself a little bit. And so through that self journey on that campus, I kind of realized that I ultimately wanted to help people. One, help everybody, but two, I wanted to make sure that people of color had a more prominent role in the electoral politics in this country. And so this is kind of on the cusp of Barack Obama getting into power. That's kind of what everything was happening, tied up to that election. And so from there, I did a slight internship, a couple months up on Capitol Hill. I'm working for a local congressman. I got up there, it was interesting, it was exciting, but it just really wasn't my speed. So then, I was kicking around, did some nonprofit work, and then I found a job with local government. And local government is interesting because all the decisions kind of trickle down to local government, and it's up to them to implement those decisions. And and this is the part of government that touches the most people every day. And so from there, I was able to help people directly. I can leave work every day knowing that I helped somebody and moved the ball forward in my own personal way. So I continued doing that for a couple of years. That's kind of how I got to Fairfax County.
Now, so you said the local area is somewhere where you feel like you enact direct change. Can you give an example of something that you did on the local level that enact direct change, so that the listeners know when they vote on the local level that it's making a difference?
Well, one of my bosses always said that the budget is a reflection of your priorities as a community. So whenever we pass a budget that increases the amount of money that goes to the school system, and then we have children that come out of that school system, that's the part we have. Even more direct, I was involved with helping with the Silver Line. Going out to Reston now, going out to Dulles Airport. Our involvement in belief in mass transit and all the economic development that is spurred from that mass transit is something that it's a position of a philosophy, a belief that mass transit ultimately is better for the community, and it moves more people, it's more environmentally friendly, and there's other aspects of mass transit. So I feel like helping out with those types of situations, but, there was so much different other transportation-related items that spurred from that particular project. But, creating bus lines to help, people get to work. We started a free student bus program in Fairfax County. It's highly regarded. That was spawned out of an idea from one of my bosses. And so, those type of things where people, their day-to-day changes because of the action of local government. And, with the help of the other levels, the federal and the state, to make sure we get the funding that we need, to make sure we get the oversight that we need, help make those decisions happen. But ultimately, it's the local government that decides to enact those decisions. So
you see direct changes. So, okay, like I'm not really sometimes not feeling, both sides. I like to look very objectively. One of my fraternity brothers, George, he's really into politics, and he said, I particularly vote for my interest, not for a party. So he's not like, don't label me no Democrat, don't label me a Republican, don't even label me an independent. I look at the issues and I vote per issues that I feel are important to me. Is there a place besides that voter place where you can find issues and see where people slide on both to make decisions based on your interest?
Well, I mean, ultimately, that's a decision, a personal decision about what you want to support. Obviously, I would suggest you look for the individual that helps create the future that you want to see in your community. And so looking for their policy positions is something, you could do by looking at just the political parties, by looking at the candidates' websites, and looking at the issues that are really important to you, and just kind of comparing them. There's a website called ballotpedia.org, and it's like something similar to Wikipedia that has a lot of information about individual positions for each candidate. There's also a website called Virginia Public Access Projects, or VPAP.org, and that is a website that tracks donations to these individual candidates and also provides some data analysis regarding decisions they're making on the Virginia level. So that's helpful. So, people always want to talk about the money in politics. So you can really, pull together information about that to kind of show where the interests actually lie. At the end of the day, you're your best judge in terms of which candidate you agree with, which candidate you actually believe. But you're never going to sync up 100% with any candidate,
right?
And so,
party, right?
Or party. So that's so like I said, you're looking for the individual that's going to make the best outcome for you and your family.
Got it, and that's perfect. I like that because I remember we talked before we did this episode. It was like, yo, I'm not rocking with it. Sometimes I don't feel like I like to be not anti-government but anti-labeled. I don't want to, and I personally have a hard time with a two-party system, and we know we're more than two-party, but like when you go to election, particularly the bigger ones, maybe even the local ones, independent representatives get voted in on the local level, but on the bigger level, maybe even in the Congress level, not as much. What do you say to that person that's feeling that angst of not rocking with one party or not?
Well, I guess the one point I want to add too is in Virginia, we don't have to register as a party. In some other states, you have to register as a Democrat or Republican or independent, and then when you go to the ballot for the primary, they ask you which party you're with, and then you say, like, I'm a Democrat, they give you a Democratic ballot. In Virginia, we have what we call open primaries. So that means 1 year I can vote in the Democratic primary, the next year I can vote in the Republican primary. And so that's kind of a freedom. That's something that people move into the area and think that they have to be labeled in this one party, but really they can vote in any kind of party they want to. But in terms of finding, not wanting to be labeled an individual, I mean, you can still kind of stay on the sidelines. Just make sure you're following with the news. You're keeping up with what's going on in current events. You're having, I would say, your elevator speech of political policy ideas, right? I think everybody has a gut reaction to certain things that you're concerned about, especially on a local level. Whether your feelings about taxes, or your feeling about how land should be used, or your feeling about transportation or the school system, those type of things. So like I said, based off those basic issues, that gives you a good barometer about where you might lie. And like I said, we're not going to sync up 100% with any political party, but at least you kind of know where you stand. I know right now, let's say in the Democratic Party, there's a big push and pull between the left, the left side of the political spectrum versus the center left in the political spectrum within the actual party. And so that kind of manifests itself in battles between Bernie Sanders as type people and the more conservative Democrats. But one of the things that's for certain with politics, every political party is shaped by the individuals from where they come from. So a California Democrat is way different from a Virginia Democrat.
Yes.
And then a Virginia Democrat is way different than a Texas Democrat. And so the party is this way of galvanizing those thoughts. In other countries, because they have a parliamentary system, most of the European nations do at least, they have to build coalitions because they can't get to party rule by just themselves. So they have to work with other groups to get to a spot where they're able to rule over, the government. In the United States, we just have the two major parties. But don't think there's not other parties. There's several parties out there that are growing in interest every day as people who become either disinfected with the major political party, or just really to say, like, this political party is not for me and I'm looking for something different. So there's other parties, they are active locally.
What's some obscure ones? So we know there's the Green Party, there's the Libertarians, right?
The Tea Party, that came
Tea
up.
Party. I'm sorry.
The Tea Party. There's the modern.
No offense, they nuts, man. I'm sorry. I don't care about the listeners. No, this is Philip Wilkerson's opinion, not Paul. I ain't trying to get Paul caught up in his politics, but Philip Wilkerson thinks Tea Party people are nuts. So if you're a Tea Party person, I'm sorry I offended you on Positive Philter. I still love you. I love everybody. So we got Tea Party. We got Libertarians.
There's the Constitution Party. That's the big one.
Oh, the Constitution Party. Never heard of that.
Yeah, honestly. So there's a big one in the news right now is the Democratic Socialist Party. That's the one that Bernie Sanders espouses those beliefs. They just won a couple of seats, one seat up in New York City. They're running a lot of people in Pennsylvania, so that's the one that's
so it's
growing.
A branch off. It's completely different.
It's a mixture of the socialist ideas and the Democratic Party ideas, democratic ideas.
But they got their own name.
Yes, they're Democratic Socialists, separate party, but they're growing. They call themselves DSA. They're growing in the DC area. Okay. At least for bound. There's the Tax Revolt Party.
The Tax Revolt Party.
Yeah, there's the old school communist political party, the American Populist Party.
There's a Communist Party.
Correct, sir. There's been a Communist Party in this country for a very long time.
Were they getting spied on by the feds because they thought they were Russians?
That was part of it. Yeah, so the Communist Party was very large, and they were tied to the labor movement early on. The United States government did not like that, so they kind of tried to stamp it out. But the Communist Party has been around since before the 20s, I want to say.
Was that during the McCarthy era thing?
Yes.
Is that when they tried to crank down on them?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a history major, so I got bits and pieces. I'm going to try to drop some gems, but I really don't know every... I throw these random things out to act like I'm smart, but I really did not know that the Communist Party was still around.
Yes, still around.
And so did they win seats, though? They got some people.
At the end of the day, it's winner take all. So you have to build a movement and make sure that your voters come out and turn out and elect people. So while they don't win any big large seats, they still are active. They still do what they need to do to get on to the ballot, which is getting signatures in the petition. And so they try to espouse these ideas. And there's still people who believe those ideas, and they still represent that. And so they're just looking for an opportunity to win an election. But these parties are still out there.
Now, in regards, what are the big hot topics? So I guess on a national level, we can say 1,000 topics, but gun control, immigration, life, marijuana, all those things. What are some of the ones for this midterm that people need to be aware of that's going to be really affected by the midterm elections? And that's just stick to issues and not people.
Yeah. So obviously there's a new presidential administration's been in for about 2 years. They have staked out some interesting positions on foreign policy, also on domestic issues related to gender equality issues, immigration, economics in terms of the tariffs. So there are a lot of repercussions from some of the decisions that have been made, and so those are kind of the flashpoints where people are looking to make a change in terms of policy decision. Now, even if let's say the Democrats win the House, they still would need to work with the president in order to get something signed, and so you're hearing from some of the Democrats who are running against Republicans out in the country about basically ideas where they can work with the president. So they're talking a lot about infrastructure. We all need good, safe roads and bridges, and it helps our economy as well. New, material goods. So they're looking for things like that. Jobs, more jobs, attracting businesses to the community, those type of issues. So they're looking for some bridges to work with the president with, but basically. There's a lot of differences between the current administration and the two major parties, and so everybody's just kind of looking to stake out, why they're different than the other party.
Got it. And then I was listening to Barack Obama about recently, just saying when you look at politics now, the face of politics is more representative of the American people, in a sense that it's not all white men, right? What is your sense of that and where that's headed for people of color, particularly?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's definitely changing. With the growth of African Americans have been involved in politics for a very long time. Even back from the Reconstruction era, there were African American congressmen, but I think what going forward, there's the Southeast Asian community is growing, the Hispanic, Latinx community is growing as well, and then the Asian Americans as well. They're all becoming larger parts of the conversation, and I think where it's more prevalent is actually not on the candidate side, but behind the scenes side.
Okay, yeah.
And behind the scenes, when you're talking about the fundraisers and the political operatives and that nature, that helps build a kind of more lasting situation, because they've always been able to put somebody in power and whatever. But I think when you create your own little political machines for each of these different groups, then they can kind of build these new coalitions. And one significant group that is being looked at for change is young people.
Yes,
They are now the largest voting bloc in America, millennials and Gen Z.
I'd like to say real quick that I'm not a millennial.
Yes.
Nah, I'm just everyone thinks that's going to be a joke to my friends that hear this episode are going to probably argue, but I guess I'm a millennial. But I just want to throw that in.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely differences.
I like the Gen, what's it called?
Gen Z.
Yes,
it's the one after us, but
was after us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then I'm not Gen Z.
But there are definitely distinctions between the millennial groups. It's definitely.
I'm not a typical. I saw the list. I'm not a typical. So, but you're saying that this group we're going to push out some of the baby boomers, and this generation is the generation of millennials and on is going to be the next leaders.
Absolutely, and where it becomes important is because baby boomers are really, their bread and butter in terms of political issues are Medicare, Social Security.
Okay.
Some of these things that are basically we're funding those right now as people in the workforce, and so it is become prevalent that we need to raise our voices and make sure that they are looking out for our concerns, because we're helping to fund a lot of the things that they're looking for in the retirement, but they're not looking back at us and helping us in terms of issues that are important to us, like the environment.
Because we're leaving the earth for us.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And
and so this is where it takes a little bit of coalition, building, in the sense that, we all need to work together to kind of create the community that we want to see. So we can't just, have policies that harm the future generations and not leave it, better for our kids and that so off. So I mean, I think a lot of the polls would say that people our age and younger don't think that they're going to get the same shake of it that their parents did. And so we really need to take a look at why that is happening. And there's a lot of different theories about that. But, I think that's ultimately, like I said, people are really concerned about the outcomes that the political decisions they make are happening. So
when we say, what was it looking like? Who voted in the last election? what ages are really coming out? What ages are need to step it up a little bit?
Well, trend wise, actually, I just did took a JMU course actually. About young people voting. Generally during presidential election, young people show up. So young people showed up about 73%. I'm gonna say this last president.
73% of their group.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Well, so not everybody voted, obviously, but but out of those young people between 18 and 29, about 73% of them showed up.
Right.
Part of that electorate. So that that's pretty good. But when historically, this election, the midterm election, it drops to 35%.
Whoa, big drop.
And really it's because it's easier for people to understand, the president, but then it becomes, your congressperson, and that actually is a person that has a lot more bearing on your individual everyday life than the president does. And so really trying to raise that awareness, and then also, the movements that are out there that have been happening, whether it's the Women's March or the Me Too or the March for Our Lives, those have really galvanized young people to get engaged in the politics and try to become a force for that. So, I think we're going to see, hopefully, a larger uptake of young people being engaged in this election going forth from November 6th.
Now, you think it's ever going to be like we're so lazy, you think we're ever going to get like mobile voting?
Well...
And would you think that would be actually safe?
As in right now, so expats, my understanding is they can vote via email.
Who can?
Expats, people out in foreign countries,
like ambassadors and stuff.
Yeah, sort of like
that.
State
Department.
Yeah,
people.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the exacts, but I know that email.
Not X-Pac.
Yeah, not X-Pac.
Not X-Pac.
But I know people do email voting. There are states. Okay. Basically, the voting is left up to the state. So there are some states that are very progressive, and there are some states that are very regressive. And so that's a big issue too. That we don't have. Number one, we don't have a national voting holiday, which would, I think, really set the table.
Why couldn't they? Yeah, why can't we be off on that day? That's one. And then also, like to say the mobile voting, I mean, everyone turns out. Like, I bet you if you compared American Idol and all those like crappy TV shows compared to American voting, how convenient people are, texting from their phone on their couch. Wouldn't you think they'd just be more likely to be involved in politics?
This is kind of where I put my conspiracy theories hat on, because obviously, you want to try to get as many people as possible to vote.
Right.
So the fact that we're not trying to figure out ways to get more people to vote, and in some circumstances we're trying to reduce the ways that people to vote, makes you think that maybe there's something to it in voting. You should probably be looking into what you should be doing and engage with that. And I can just give you an example, right now where in the state of Georgia, the Republican contender for that seat is also the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is the person who's in charge of the voting rolls, essentially.
Okay.
And so right now, there are about 53,000 people, 70% of those being African Americans, that have put in a application to vote, and they're on hold right now.
So this is like digital and circumstantial, what's that word? When you prevent someone from voting, not gerrymandering, right?
Not gerrymandering. That's it.
I don't know, but
voter suppression.
There we go, voter suppression, but digitally and physically. Because I did notice that too. Like, sometimes when some people can't get rides to the polls, they can't. They don't have, like you said, the public transportation directly affects that. So how can a mom that works 2 jobs and they got no time to go vote unless it was on their phone? What if they're really involved but they just literally cannot get to the polls?
Well,
what do we do for that?
Technically, most jobs are supposed to let you off to vote, and in fact, for whatever reason, politically motivated or not, corporations are getting engaged. I just read today, Kava is giving every one of their employees 2 hours paid to go and vote
during that time. But they have to prove it, right?
I don't think so. They might have to prove it. But
I would make them prove it.
But 2 hours paid is something that in the fast casual restaurant business, that's big. You know, that's those are people who don't. Those people aren't thinking about voting more than likely.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so, and then also on your point, transportation, Uber and Lyft have said that they are offering free transportation to polls. And Uber and Lyft even said, like, even if you got to the wrong polling location, which happens sometimes because you just don't, you know, if you move or something like that, they'll take you to the next spot too.
So I love these ideas, but how are they gonna prove it? Like,
What do you mean, how you prove?
You come out with your sticker or something like that?
No, you just say you're gonna go to the poll. I mean, that's.
Okay,
I mean,
that's honor code.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really gonna go through all the effort to get an Uber, you're gonna go vote.
Yeah.
I believe in the good-hearted people that do what they're gonna do. And then I guess if you're really gonna take off work from Cabo, you most likely. I mean, what are you gonna do for 2 hours besides vote?
Yeah.
Maybe.
You know, but these are things. Well, let's put it this way: these are things that weren't happening. 2016 was supposed to be, you know, the biggest election of our life. It won't happen before that. So obviously, there's something to it. If it might be PR stunt or whatever, but corporations are getting engaged with voting, and they want to make sure that their employees are voting. And so, you know, but obviously, you know, a voting holiday would be awesome, and that just gives the opportunity for everybody to vote. Because we know, just in the political business, let's say, that there's a certain amount of people who just won't vote anyway. And so a lot of the times we work to try to engage those individuals and vote. And so statistically, they say it takes about 5 to 7 times of contacting an individual before they actually say, like, hey, I'm going to go out and vote. So when there's
Why they just don't feel like they're going to do it?
No, it just takes a little bit of repetition. It's a little bit, you know, waiting to the last minute. It's a little bit just like I don't feel comfortable with the information. So when individuals, you know, this is like knocking season right now. So people are out in neighborhoods canvassing, knocking on doors. And, you know, you might get your house knocked a couple different times. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why people are calling, people are texting. They just know that statistically you need a couple of different reminders. And that's why you have individuals standing in front of the polling place, either side, with a sample ballot with information about their own particular political party and the positions that they support. Because it's just people need reminders. And so, you know, for the, you know, 10% of people who are Uber voters, there's a lot of people who just, you know, they want to do the civic duty, and so we're not mad at you there. You know, we'll get you on the other side, but definitely it's important to go out and vote.
Okay, so how? I mean, it sounds like a really probably the dumb, like simplest question. How do you vote?
Sure. So in Virginia, one of the things you need to know is you need to have a photo ID. You have to have a photo ID. It doesn't have to be your driver's license. Actually, they'll give you a free ID. If you want to go down to the Fairfax County Government Center, you can get a free ID for voting, or you can use, you know, a passport or a military ID. There's a whole set of IDs, and actually you can go to vote.org, and they'll tell you this information as well. Okay. But it's just a nonprofit that is all about voting. So you need a photo ID. You're gonna walk in. They're gonna see some people sitting at a table. They're gonna ask you your name. They're gonna ask you to recount what your address is. Mm-hmm. You say that. They're gonna hand you a paper ballot. We don't do touchscreens. The touchscreens actually, those are the hackable ones. Those are the ones that when you try to get the data out of it, sometimes they lose votes.
Are they going away from that?
Yes, they're going away from that. Fairfax County actually went away from that probably the election before last, and that was mostly because they kind of saw it coming down the pipeline, but it's a national thing. Scantron, just old school testing, that's always best. You have a paper record, so there's no hanging chads, there's no in disputes. You can see whether a person, you know, circled or X, and some people, and yes, circle it in, because, you know, if it's a close election and we got to go through these votes, you know, some of these folks just don't circle in. They circle your choice. You know, not circle. You just want to circle the bubble, circle it in.
I mean, like, really dumb it down. Some people are just really dumb and don't.
When we have to review those all the ballots, we see a whole lot of stuff, and it becomes up to the determination of the judge who's in charge of the recount, essentially, whether or not what was the intent of that voter. So sometimes that voter circled both names, and they got to figure
throw it out, right?
Yeah.
They just throw it out?
Yeah. So, but, you know, what happened down, you know, so just to take a local story, the General Assembly just last year was on a teeter of swinging, but 14 votes, and those 14 votes went down to essentially they had to essentially put a slip of paper into a film canister and shake it around in a bowl and take the bowl out, and that's who won the election. Only because they had verified a vote, and then based on interpretation of a judge said nope, that vote doesn't count. It now becomes this, and then that was it.
I mean, and be honest, like I never heard this story. Do these stories like people just don't hear this, or it's out there and they don't listen?
It's out there and they don't listen.
Like,
we
I never heard of this.
It's very real. Us in the political party, we live and die by this thing. We have friends and candidates that lose by less than 100 votes, which is like an apartment building.
Yes.
So every vote matters. I'm not even telling you which side to vote for. I'm saying every vote matters. That
comes
time
down to the wire like
that.
that.
It does. It comes down to the wire. And so like I said, they're spending your money. So there's not a lot of people who could take 27% out of your paycheck, and you just don't care about it. Other than a gym or something like that. So why don't you just take a little bit of time and go down to the poll?
Now, I know I had like a smart question, but now I'm kind of like blanking. But let me think. So you talked about that. You talked about voting. So when for those people that say I'm not going to vote because everyone's whack, and then do you have that mindset? This is my mindset that you can't complain if you're not part of the program. Like, do you kind of get that attitude with people? I do. I definitely don't. Like, I understand, like, if you don't like someone, you can even just write in people, right? Can't you just write in?
You can write in people,
But
here.
I just feel like if you don't participate, then don't say nothing. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I used to be on the mindset kind of like that, but then I started to think that, there are other ways that you can participate in the process without voting.
All right.
Not saying that that's the best, but you basically limit yourself in some senses of voting, because voting ultimately is your way to either say distaste or support of a particular position. But still, regardless if you voted for that elected official or not, they still are your representative. So you still can write, you still can talk, you still can advocate for things that you believe in. But you get a little bit more buy-in as a voter. But it doesn't really stop you from doing these other advocates type deals.
And you did say some other things like writing and emailing and stuff. Do they actually read that stuff?
Absolutely.
Like, I know one of my frat brothers, I don't even know if he's going to listen to this dude named Mark Peters. He's really heavy in the mailing postcards to the candidates and trying to get us on the campaign to mail postcards. Do they actually read this stuff?
Absolutely. I will tell you that everything that is written in the political office is examined and categorized, and they do look at it. Obviously, the larger the jurisdiction, the longer time it might take to get back to you, or something like that. But
They respond to you.
Sometimes it depends. It depends on.
I mean, the level, like the small. If it's the local level, they write you back. People write you back.
Yeah, please. If you're writing an elected official and you make sure it's a question, it's hard to determine if you give a statement how to respond.
That's it. Like nothing really. It's no engagement, but you leave it like a real question.
Yeah, if you have real questions, obviously that even if you don't have real questions, you're gonna get a response. But if you're really trying to get something out of that elected official, put it in the question form. Always it's helpful. That enables us to find a piece of information and give that back to you. And if you just want to have a discourse, a lot of elected officials like to do open houses or open hours and stuff like that, where you can kind of talk to the individual, obviously like that. But I mean, a lot of times, these individuals decided to do this work. They wanted to talk to people. Now, obviously, like everybody, they get jaded and they get tired, and you might catch them on not their best day. But at the end of the day, they're in it, regardless of party, to help people out.
So you said open hours, so people can actually go to
absolutely
go to like the real
absolutely
government center and meet with these
absolutely
set appointments.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What about someone that's a young whipper? I'm gonna just use young whippersnapper just because I wanted to say that word on the podcast. How does someone get involved in politics as an active participant, a young person, both just doing things like how you're doing with the Young Democrats, or actually running for office? What are the ways that some young people get started?
Well, obviously the best way to get started is to volunteer. Volunteering in the political sphere allows you to, one, kind of recognize what the actual tasks and jobs are within the political system, and two, it gives you experience to say what you like and what you don't like. And so based off of, your experience volunteering, one thing about Virginia is we have an election every single year. So there's no years off. That's something a lot of people don't recognize if they're moving from the area. But we have off-year elections. They're generally, your state house, your state senate, and your local board of supervisors. And then, even years are generally your federal, and your presidential. So every single year there's an opportunity to vote, and there's so many different positions, all the way down to your soil, water, conservation board, all the way up to the board of supervisors and in between. And so those are opportunities and those are job availabilities. But really, working in politics, there's a couple different fields, but there's a finance, there's field director, which is kind of working on volunteers and working on organizing strategies. There's actual political director, which is like working on relationships in the community. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can take, but the first thing obviously is a volunteer, so you kind of feel the whole understanding of the operation. And then from there, if you want to be a candidate, you just need to, there's a couple of different things, but obviously you need to figure out who's going to give you money and who's going to volunteer for you. Those are two big things.
So you need to build a team, basically.
Basically, yeah. You need to know who's going to give you money and how much money they're going to give you.
What does that give you money? Like donation money?
Donation money, correct. You need to know.
How do you get donation money? You go to like.
You will. There's a whole.
You go to churches and say, "Give me money."
No. So, so I mentioned this VPAP.org. VPAP.org tracks all the donations for any type of political race. Okay. Look at the political race that you're interested in running. Let's say you're going to run for, give you an example. Say the board of supervisors. Board of supervisors in Fairfax County typically runs anywhere between $100,000 and $500,000 to run for that particular.
To run for it.
For a risk.
And the cost of this running is what? Your ads and what goes.
So
into
the money goes towards political ads. It goes towards literature, getting mailer out to everybody in the particular area. Yeah. So just break down the jurisdictions in Fairfax County, about 120,000 each magisterial district, which is how they're broken down in the board of supervisors area. So there's 120,000 people. You're probably going to get somewhere between 4,000 to 7,000 of those people are actually going to vote for you. So you need to pinpoint information to those 4,000 to 7,000 people, make sure they know who you are, your story, and they need to vote for you. And so if you are active in the community, let's say you go to church, or maybe you're a soccer coach or something like that, that helps out because they have name recognition. If you don't, you're starting from zero. Then there's online ads, there's mailings, there's staff. You need somebody to help you kind of organize this whole operation. So all that money is going to have to come from somewhere. So you need to get donations to help with that. Whether or not you're going to run with a political party, there's some fees associated with that. There's running actual fees to run for office, obviously.
Like gas or something.
You're
going to go travel.
All that stuff. Clothes, and most of us...
Clothes, You get nice new clothes, suits.
A lot of people run down shoes when they're knocking on doors. It's just a fact. But also, most of us...
Nikes, they get Jordans.
Campaign shorts.
Campaign with some fresh 11s on. Does that work? Is that how they do it? So do they? In addition to all this stuff, is it digitally too? Do they make websites to get money?
Oh yeah. The websites, and then you have to make sure that you're in compliance. So there's campaign finance rules. They're very strict.
So you don't get caught.
Yeah, so people aren't using money for nefarious reasons. But but you definitely politics is. But don't be scared about that aspect of it. I think a lot of things that stop people of color, especially our young people, are just really anybody who you don't see in the political sphere, is they say, "Oh, I can't do that." Well, anybody can run. And the threshold is basically, do you understand what your job is supposed to do? and some of the responsibilities. And you don't even have to have a master's level understanding of it. You just need to have enough understanding to be able to articulate it to other people why your decision choices are better than the current person. And then you also need to be open to learning.
Well, I mean, let's be real though. Most people in politics are educated though, right?
No,
So
no, not
most,
always.
most have a college degree at least, minimal.
Some people do, but
And most have maybe working toward a master's degree of some sort. But now we know that's not necessarily the case. So we've been talking for quite a while. I think it's almost the time of the end of the show. But before I end, I always do my last segment of the show, which I call Shot for Shot. It's a late Monday night, so we both chose not to drink. But I definitely, for Shot, if you don't know from my previous episodes, it's when we ask each other a totally random question, not even related to politics, could be, and we had to answer honestly. So with this being a guest, would you want to go first or I go first with my random question? All right. Why did you go to JMU, of all schools?
It's actually funny. So when I was in high school, there was a program for African American high school students. It was like a college preparatory program.
You was in that?
Yeah.
What summer did you go?
I can't remember.
I was summer '99.
All right, let's see. Shoot, I don't even remember right now. Maybe
We could have been at the same time.
it might have been. So
Okay.
yeah, so I went there. So actually, I didn't even start off there though. So I was really hot to leave Virginia. So I went to a very tiny school in Delaware for a year. I was there and it just felt like I was not in the right place. So I was like, where can I go back to school in Virginia? And the only school that kept on coming up in my mind was JMU. So I spent those summers there. I really liked the campus. It's really cool. The people were awesome. So that's where I transferred to.
And you didn't go to, I know your mom, shout out to your mom, she works at Mason's. You didn't want to go to Mason's?
Nah, it's too close.
Too close. Too close, man. All right, what's my other question?
What's the biggest challenge you've had so far this year?
That's a big one. I say starting a new job. I started a new job, and then coincidentally, right after I started a new job, I had my second son. So the spring was quite a whirlwind, and I really didn't feel like I was settled into my job, and felt like I was messing up a lot. And so, but coincidentally, after the summer passed, I feel like I'm really doing good. But I would say, yeah, that was probably the biggest challenge. The whole spring semester was a blur, both in regards to no sleep and working. So I finally feel like I'm back to my normal self and feeling good about life, life in general. But I would think that's my biggest challenge. So thank you for asking. So we are wrapping up. I definitely want you to be able to put all the links that you shared. Let's remember to put all those in the show notes because I think those are some great resources. As a member of Alpha Alpha, I definitely, what led me to be a part of this group, I think attracted me was that they were all well-educated men in my chapter, and they're really politically involved. They do watch parties, and they just really get into politics, and I felt like maybe being around such men like that would kind of make me feel more politically involved, and I definitely like that mindset, that quote, voteless people is a hopeless people, meaning like you put faith into the government system that hopefully your voice is heard. Now, necessarily, does it feel like that all the time? No, but the faith that you're using your voice and actually making a change makes you feel like you're hopeful rather than hopeless. I want to give you an opportunity to plug anything that you want to plug, social media, and then also give some shout outs to some people that you care about. So go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, thanks Phil for having me on. Really, really good talking to you about the issue that's near dear to me. Also, number two, I'm not an expert. Don't take everything I say, as the Bible, because it's not. So that's in my opinion. So there's that. But the best thing is, like I said, is just to be involved with politics. So go to your local committees. Talk to your elected officials. They are there. They're ready to listen. Weigh in on local issues that have to do with land use or your school system or your criminal justice system. we, as a professional who works in the local government, we have and spend time putting together these meetings, and either people don't show up or the people who show up aren't reflective of the community. So there's a wasted opportunity for everybody. So we want to hear your voices. We want to hear your perspectives. It's going to make our community a better place. So get engaged.
All right, and what's some plugs? And some shout-outs. I know you want to shout out your wife. At least shout out your wife and kids on the show. I'm helping you out, Miss Davis, right here.
Yeah, shout out to my wife, Angela, my son, Lorenzo, my daughter, Gianna.
And what are some social medias?
You can catch me at social media. My Twitter is PDAVI2.
Okay. You engage in some politics on Twitter and talk to
yeah,
people?
We'll do a little stuff.
And then also, I noticed we said it's bipartisan, but go ahead and shout out your Young Democrats. I don't care.
It was Fairfax Young Democrats representing Fairfax County and the city of Fairfax. Also, Virginia Young Democrats, VAYD.org. We're out here.
Yeah, we're out here. And thank you so much for listening to Positive Philter. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity Movement. Thanks for listening.